Well, family, welcome to a special edition of The Hub. I am extremely excited. One, because as you can see, there's a whole different backdrop. I'm outside, it's a completely different space, but also the gentleman I have next to me is a near and dear guest. This will probably be the most exciting show we've had this far. But I want to just start by saying this. We're not in America, we're not in the US, we're not in my office space at home, but we're actually in, and I want you to say it so I don't get it wrong. Go ahead and say it for the people.
We're in Nairobi, Kenya.
Nairobi, Kenya.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So I told you guys this platform is one, just trying to bridge the gap just between Africa and the States. I think Africa is the center of all things. I think culturally, knowing ourselves as African people of African descent, we need to know where we come from. And what better way than to do that by my next guest? His name is Wango Alfred. He's actually been helping my wife and I here in Nairobi, Kenya. We've been to so many places. We've tasted the food. We've had chapati. Chapati's like
Yeah.
my favorite food. We've had, what do we just have? Stew?
We had some green grams too.
Some green gum stew. So we've tasted everything. We've been to many different places. But this guy, I believe, I call him the king of Nairobi. He's full of wealth and just a wealth of knowledge. And so without further ado, Wango Alfred, man,
Yeah.
welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank
I appreciate
you.
it. Thank you for having
Thank
me.
you. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't start just by one where things are currently in Kenya.
Yeah.
My wife and I showed up. We were traveling here. We got here on a Tuesday. I'm going to the gym, and literally I walk outside and I see workers recording, and everybody's in kind of disarray, talking loudly. I look at the street, and people are marching and yelling towards what we call the CBD, which is the Center Business District.
Business district.
Okay, yes. So I would rather have you explain
Yeah.
than me, because I
Yeah.
think you would do better. So talk about
Yeah.
what's kind of happening in Kenya right now.
So a couple of weeks ago, there was a finance bill that was footed to the parliament that was to go through the parliamentary process whereby for something to become a law in Kenya, it has to go through certain stages. So there has to be a first reading, a second reading, all that happens within the parliament. Then after that, it goes for approval, whereby the presidents get to either sign or send it back to the parliament for any further discussion. If it goes past that, it goes into a committee that later gets to, discuss some of the clauses. If anything needs to be amended, that happens. Then later after that goes back to parliament and later becomes a bill. So one thing about this specific bill called the Finance Bill of 2024 is that it introduced certain taxes onto the Kenyan people, most of them which are attributed to the Kenyan government trying to make revenue so as to pay loans given to the country by the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. So a majority of the Kenyans found the taxes to be a bit punitive, and considering the state of the nation whereby things are a bit difficult at the moment with the economy being very hard on the people, the people felt that this was quite unfair because already things were difficult. Then imposing more taxes on the people, that meant livelihoods getting more difficult and cost of living getting really high. And this was a trigger for things that had been building from a government that has had corruption being part of it, with a lot of bad governance and terrible spending by the government. This finance bill came as a trigger that blew up, and it got to a point where a majority of the young people, who most of them are also educated, decided enough is enough and took to the streets. This is just the second year of a new regime, and people felt this is already a couple of years in. This is a regime that during the election promised to make lives better for Kenyans, and people felt, why are things not going as you had promised? Why is this a whole regime full of bad governance with incompetent people? Why are you trying to press people down, yet you promise that you're trying to build the economy from the bottom up, where you get to empower the majority coming up, whereby the people have the sovereignty, where they have the power coming up to the leaders. So also a majority of the people felt that the people who represented them, who are the members of parliament, went and passed this bill, in as much as the majority of the people told their parliamentarians, kindly do not pass this bill because it's very oppressive to us. And the members of parliament went ahead to pass it just because they pledge allegiance to their party, with the president being the party leader.
Right.
And people became very angry. It's like, you're not listening to the people, yet you're here to serve the people.
Right.
And that is what built to this protest where people showed up to the streets. And luckily, this was faced by brutality by the police, which also caused more rage because people are like, why are you killing us? You know, we are peaceful. We're just showing up with our phones trying to show what's happening, with our placards asking for parliamentarians to do better and for the governance of the country to do much better. Yet this is being faced by violence. So that is what triggered the protests that have been happening every Tuesday and Thursday within Nairobi for the past 2 weeks now.
So I want to make a couple things kind of clear because I want to tie this into what's happening in the States.
Yeah.
One thing is that in the States, we're dealing with inflation. So
Yeah.
you talk about the price of eggs that's going up like $5.
Yeah.
So I can go to the store now and pay almost $10 just for a pack of eggs.
Yeah.
So here in Kenya, some of those things that fell in that tax bill, what were things that were being taxed that could affect people?
So some of them included the cost for bread, for instance. Bread is a very staple breakfast meal that most Kenyans would go to. Some of the stuff that also taxes were being added onto sanitary products as well, which people felt was quite unfair. Some of the money that would offset cancer treatment within Kenya as well, some of taxes were to be added onto that. You had taxes like eco levy that added taxes onto every commodity made from a commodity like cars, rubber, meaning tires, all that, meaning everything had been connected, whereby if the cost of one thing goes up, meaning everything else.
So things needed for everyday living.
Exactly.
So a lot of the folks who had kind of been enraged by everything, who were upset, those are the folks who actually probably are being the most impacted. And as we would say it in America, you feel like you have the thumb on you all the time.
Yeah.
And so those folks actually come from the slums, most of them who were protesting.
Yeah.
Which in a different way in the States, we have a lot of people who live in projects in the hood. This very same thing is happening and has been happening for years.
Yeah.
So as somebody who knows this community well, who was born here, what's the state of just one, looking at this tax bill and seeing them protest, but what's the state of kind of the feeling that people are feeling right now, I guess?
Well, one thing about this protest, what also makes it different is that it cut across different financial backgrounds. You find on the protest, you had people from low income areas, you had people from middle income areas, because everyone felt we all will be impacted by this bill. These are the same people who are trying to start up businesses. These are the same people trying to lead a life. So you find it would affect each and every single person at their level. But you find mostly the people bottom, at the very bottom, are the one who are to feel the pinch the most. Because already the situation is very hard already in all these hoods. You find already access to clean water is a privilege. Access to good roads, access to regular electricity, because some of these places they have to get electricity one way or another, you know. So already access to facilities such as toilets, you know, public health already is an issue within these areas. So for them are like, why are you putting more and more taxes on me, yet you as a government are not even giving me the bare minimum. I need proper sanitary hygiene where I'm living. I need proper housing. I need clean water to my house. Yet I'm paying taxes for all these things that I'm yet to get. And yet you're putting a heavier burden on me. So already that's it's resentment that's been building.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things that also came up that was said, there were 23 people, as far as we know, that had been shot and killed by the police.
Yes.
Same thing in the States. There's a lot of issues between the police and the people. Can you just talk about that dynamic and what you've seen, I guess, through the years of kind of how the police, I mean, even doing something like that, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, because most people feel a police officer during a protest, there's a way they've been trained that this is how to handle a protest.
Mm-hmm.
This is how you make sure you protect people who are out there exercising their democratic right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is also how you deal with someone who's taking advantage of the protest and probably stealing or looting someone's property.
Right.
You arrest them. So with cases whereby where you hear of people dying during the protests, it becomes really sad because this is not how you're supposed to handle such protests, you
Right.
know.
Right.
If someone is being unlawful, they get arrested, and you have to tell someone why you're arresting them.
Mm-hmm.
But in the case where you're seeing that we're having people being shot, you're having police officers using live bullets during protests,
Mm-hmm.
that's very unconstitutional.
Mm-hmm.
According to law, you're not supposed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And you find that it's very easy for such police officers to get away with that.
Wow.
So, and the bigger question becomes, is it that they've been empowered by the state where they can kill their people and no action is taken against them? So that's also the part of the resentment that's building up.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, why are protesters being peaceful, yet they're being approached with death?
Mm.
Why do you need to kill people because they're protesting for their rights, you know? So
Right.
there's a lot of that. The other day we had a child who was shot.
Yeah.
He had 8 bullets in him.
Mm.
So people are like, why are you shooting a child, you know?
Yeah.
So that's all the rage that's boiling up in already in a society that's already angered by how governance is so far.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's a scripture I have been meditating on since I've been here, and I would hear it all the time at home. A biblical scripture that says the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. And so, how can you know what the earth is if you haven't been to these places?
Mm.
And so, part of why I think this is an extremely important conversation
Yeah.
is because people can now be brought into this world.
Yeah.
And a lot of things at home, we can turn on the TV and a commercial will show sick babies
Yeah.
with different things going on, different diseases.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's not all of Africa.
Sure.
But from this story, we learn a couple of things. One, that all governments seem to have some sort of corruption.
Yeah.
And then seeing people who look like us in a different country use their rage to now go and peacefully protest.
Yeah.
And I mean, of course, there were things that happened along the way. People went to parliament.
Yeah.
But still, I think that's important for people to know as well, that you guys have taken your pain and have turned it into purpose.
Yes,
and what would you say is the biggest purpose in all of this?
Well, for most of the young protesters who showed up to the streets, we mainly did for the generations to come.
Mm-hmm.
Because you find down generations, we've had different regimes, but it gets to a point where a generation comes up and they're like, we're tired.
Yeah.
We do not want for this thing to be a norm where we are very okay with a government treating its people as if they don't care, where they can steal funds allocated for children going to school, people getting good health care, people having access to water.
Right.
And we've made it a norm that these people can get into the office, and in 2-3 years, this person has some of the biggest cars in his parking lot, yet they got into power with nothing.
Wow.
Not even a car.
Mm.
So people are like, why have we become very okay with this happening?
Yeah.
So people are like, we need this to change.
Mm.
We need the governance to act better. We need all these leaders to be accountable to the people who elect them to represent them.
Wow.
So that's what people want.
Mm-hmm.
We want things to be done different. Whenever people vote you into office, this is how you need to act. Whereby we don't need to applaud a fish for swimming.
Right. Right.
You know, like you got in, you need to do your work and you need to be accountable. So that's why people showed up. So that needs to be the norm. You get in there, do your work as your people require you to do.
But this type of unity is great to see. It's amazing to see. We have it in the States. We see it a little bit, but I'm talking about just even in some of the communities I've grown up in, where you're underserved, you don't have the most resources. That type of fight that I saw on the streets, I think is absent a bit. And it's not everybody. And I want to make this clear. I'm not generalizing everybody, but I'm saying for a large part of it, that fight doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
And so where would you say that comes from?
Yeah. So it's funny how nobody saw this thing happening. And I also wouldn't say that it was spontaneous, because yes, it was building up, but this thing happened in an instant where a majority of the conversations were happening on social media.
Mm-hmm.
People would get on X and have conversations on the spaces, Twitter, that were formerly called Twitter Spaces, now
Yeah.
on X.
Yeah.
You'd have a space having over 50,000 people just having a conversation. What's the state of the nation?
Wow.
So already these are conversations already happening within the channels that were available to us.
Mm-hmm.
So by the time people were having now conversations, even in their physical spaces, you find that the conversations are happening everywhere. So by the time people decide that we are showing up to the streets in solidarity, we need to get these people out.
Mm-hmm.
It was everyone showing up for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
This was me showing up, carrying an extra bottle of water for someone who might need it. This was me having a first aid kit
Mm-hmm.
in my bag. These were people donating to buy water bottles because of the tear gas that was to be there.
Mm-hmm.
These are doctors who are unpaid by their government showing up to the streets to volunteer for people who would get injured
Wow. Wow.
during the
And
protests.
being shot at.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was everyone coming on board and they're like, we're tired. It gets to a point, you get to a breaking point.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it just happened that it was everyone's breaking point.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And people are, enough is enough.
Wow.
So we also see how also social media played a very big impact, whereby that was the main tool of communication.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a protest that did not have leaders who organized it. It did not have people funding it. It did not have people with a special interest deciding that let me mobilize people to show up and protest.
Mm-hmm.
But it was everyone being their leader to
Yeah.
show up. Like everyone is like, I do not have a leader. I am my leader.
Mm.
No one told me to come out and protest. I'm the one who wants to come out and protest.
Mm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's how it's been.
And the word that they've been using is formless. So like you couldn't find any one person.
Exactly.
They're trying to find leaders. There were things going on. And
People
like,
have been abducted,
yeah.
and they're
Yeah.
like, who's organizing this? So also there have been a lot of tactics to instill fear,
Mm-hmm.
but they'll adapt them on today. Go into hiding. People will say they need to release you, and they realize there's no specific leader. So also the aspect of it being very formless has played an impact where it's everyone leading their fight from their own space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to shift gears a little bit because I want the people to get to know you and just hear about your story.
Yeah.
And so if you would, just tell us how you grew up.
Yeah.
Of course, we know you were born here.
Yeah.
But just give people a little more background about you. Yeah.
I was born in the year 1997.
Okay. Generation Z.
Yeah. in a neighborhood not too far from here within Eastlands, Nairobi, called Buruburu. And ideally, I'd say I grew up in a very vibrant childhood, within a community. A lot of people got to go through my primary, secondary education, and still within this place. Then in university, I studied in a school called Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, where I did my bachelor's in landscape architecture, which I later graduated in the year 2021. Yeah, but all through, I've always been, a creative kid. I've always loved drawing all through.
Yeah.
So it's been part of me. Then along the way, I've picked up different skills from different people, where I can say it's been a privilege because I didn't need to go to a school to learn certain things, but from other people. So once I was done with school, I've been running my things as a creative entrepreneur, I'd say. So I'm an artist. I draw, I paint, I sketch a lot. I'm also a photographer, mainly a documentary photographer, telling the stories of my people, my surrounding, and I'm very much inspired by my culture and history. I also run a brand called Karibu Nairobi.
Yeah. Look. So you got to show the shirts off, man.
Yeah.
I'm rocking one now just in case people see it. Yeah.
So I make the t-shirts whereby there's an apparel, Karibu Nairobi apparel, that I run under the same. Karibu Nairobi is also a community where we are very much inspired by the culture of Nairobi. So this comes from us documenting our surrounding, telling the stories of Nairobi, which later on has grown into a community, and within the same community where we get to tell stories through curating experiences and tours within Nairobi, just to teach the culture, the history, the people, and the hustle of Nairobi.
Mm.
Yeah, so those are among the things that I do at the moment.
So you, a part of this is people don't know in the states who probably haven't traveled that you exist.
Mm,
Meaning, you would be called a Renaissance man. You have many different talents, skills.
yeah.
You have the smarts,
Mm-hmm.
and so a lot of what I kind of want to highlight. I think we were discussing something about journey,
Yeah.
and you're on a journey right now.
Yeah.
One, just going through your history.
Yeah.
Your name in itself is
Mm,
very significant. What
yeah.
is your name mean? If you could say it one more time and then tell
Yeah.
us what it means.
So my name being Wango,
Mhm.
Wa is a prefix in many Bantu languages, meaning of
Mm,
or belonging to.
mm,
So, and Ngo in my language, which is Kikuyu, Ngo means a shield.
mm,
So, meaning I'm of the shield, which I'd say I would attribute, for instance, me coming from a lineage of warriors or people who are tasked with the duty of either protecting the community.
mm.
Because in every African society, every individual had a role that they played
Yeah.
within the society.
Mhm.
From birth, people would speak a blessing that you may find your gift as you grow, and that gift may you use it to help
Mm,
the society
mm.
thrive.
Yeah.
So I would say that my name stems from that, and knowing the power of your name, you get to probably also understand your purpose
Oh
in this life. Because if I come from such a lineage,
man.
I
Right.
know I'm tasked with
Mm,
protecting the people around me,
mm,
protecting my family, protecting people I do not know, and also protecting myself.
mm.
Because it's very important for you to also prioritize yourself, your mind, your body, your soul, what you get into your body.
Right.
You need to protect yourself.
Oh man, I was gonna have you rewind that back to say that one more time. The power of your name gives you what?
Yeah, your
Your
purpose.
purpose. Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
yeah,
And so Wango,
yeah,
man. So now your name, you just mentioned history and what your name means.
yeah.
But even more important, I know in African culture is oral tradition. Everything is kind of passed down
Yes,
through storytelling.
yes,
And particularly the history of your family.
yeah,
And knowing that, why is that important for you to
mm,
kind of know your travel history, things like that?
yeah.
Why is that so significant?
I'd say before then, I wasn't really keen on that
Mhm.
because with most of us growing up in a space that you have a lot of influence from religion
Yeah.
and the Western form of education, is that it kind of separates your identity
Mm-hmm.
with what you're given.
Yeah.
It's more of this is what you should take up,
Mhm.
and yours that was you and is you is put aside.
Right.
So it got to a point with COVID where, we are away from school. Schools have been closed. All religious spaces have been closed.
Mm-hmm.
People got to spend time with themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Couples got to spend time together and now understand each other, be in each
Right.
other's spaces if they've been avoidant of each other.
Yeah.
Parents got to spend time with their kids. They probably did not understand each other. And this was a time where now you get to see the true colors of the person you live with, including yourself. You're
Mm-hmm.
getting to sit down with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this triggered a lot of questions within me, like who am I?
Mm-hmm.
Because most times you find there's a lot of distraction whereby you're either going to work, you wake up in the morning, you need to think about work. Once you're done with school, you probably need to go to wherever you need to do your
Exactly.
shopping. You're probably doing a different shift somewhere else.
Yeah.
On the weekends, you probably need to spend time with family. You're moving around, so you never really have time for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
where you're not really doing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So with COVID, first couple of weeks you're like, okay, we'll be back to usual. Then weeks turned into months, and this was me having all these questions within my head.
Yeah.
And I'd say I got into a space where I was very inquisitive
Mm.
in regards to my culture, my history. And I remember coming across a lot of material, especially in regards to my community. And you're like, why do I not know these things?
Mm-hmm.
Yet this is me.
Yeah.
And it was a moment of knowing stuff and realizing the more you know, the more you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And now I started going into a rabbit hole, and a lot of things about myself started making sense.
Mm.
A lot of things that I came across really empowered me.
Mm-hmm.
And that got me into a proper journey whereby I'm trying to understand who am I before all these things
Mm-hmm.
that have later been introduced?
Yeah.
Who am I before my religion?
Mm.
Who am I before the education that I get in school? When all the titles have been taken away from me, you know, who am I when I'm stripped open? Who am I?
Mm-hmm.
So of late, I'd say it's been quite a journey, you
Yeah.
know, getting to understand things, getting to see a perspective of how life is, why
Right.
things happen the way they do.
Exactly. Yeah.
And I'd say it's been it's been a great journey, even in terms of my mindset, how I look at things, how I approach life. It's been it's been quite something. It's
Yeah.
also done a great impact in my art. Um,
You hear the music? It's fine. It's good. It's good. It's all good.
yeah,
Yeah.
how I create,
Mm-hmm.
what I create, how I choose to tell, you know, the story of my people.
Yeah.
I'd say is now more informed because I have a
Wow.
further understanding of myself
Mm.
and my people.
So you mentioned some of the discoveries
Mm.
that you found that really kind of empowered you.
Yeah.
What were some of those things? Just to name a few of them
Mm.
that come to mind when you think of this journey.
I'd say first of all, getting to understand, as I said, what our names
Mm-hmm.
mean.
Mm-hmm.
Also getting to understand the stages of, say for instance, for me, I come from an ethnic group called the Kikuyu.
Kikuyu.
Just trying to understand what are the steps of a Kikuyu man from the moment they set foot on this earth and to the moment they get to rest.
Mm-hmm.
What are the different steps? What makes this man a man?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what makes them a person in this society?
Yeah.
So me getting to understand all these processes and the roles and the significance behind all the activities that would happen, be it the ceremonies that are happening in the society, how the different people related, it it was gold, you
Mm-hmm.
know, getting to understand all these things, you know.
Mm-hmm.
This is information that really grounded me, how I approached different things, how I looked at life. I can I felt like I now had sort of like a compass
Mm.
on how I approach certain things,
Wow.
how I consume certain things. There was a way now that I would approach it that I know this is right for me.
Man.
Yeah.
There's I try to think of movies that I've seen where without any knowledge of your history, I
Mm.
want to say like even cartoons. I don't know if you
Mm.
guys seen like Avatar
Yeah.
or and I just remember certain characters before they had that knowledge of the history before them,
Yeah.
they kind of just did things naturally. Like certain
Yeah.
stuff would come out and
Exactly.
you're like, okay, well, where did this come from? I just
Yeah.
use it, it's
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
but why is this coming out of me? And
Mm.
that part of what has happened, I think, and it sounds like this is really all over the world
Yeah.
through things like colonization.
Yeah.
Um, we've been kind of stripped and divided, and there's almost been like this proverbial wall that's been,
Yes.
and you kind of now have taken sort of this leap over. You're saying, well,
Mm.
there has to be something behind this wall,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the questions I've been asking as well.
Mm.
And part of that too is bringing that to the folks that I even serve and some
Mm.
of our youth,
Yeah.
and trying to make them understand that there's something beyond this wall, and it's
Yeah.
okay to ask those questions.
Yes.
And we've kind of have had tension with that, and even being somebody who is Christian,
Yeah.
folks will say everything stops here
Mm.
at Jesus,
Yeah.
and I believe in Jesus wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, culturally,
Yes.
there are some things and some history that I need to learn
Yes, indeed.
while I've been on Earth that
Yeah.
really could empower the things that I want to know
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
life. So that this stuff is important,
Yeah.
and I want people to know and even take away from you. You talked
Mm.
about you've read,
Yeah.
you've studied,
Yeah.
you've journeyed around.
Yes.
What would you say has what would you say would be the most, I guess, important way
Mm.
or method
Yeah.
of really getting into rediscovering your history?
I'd say it starts with conversations,
Mm-hmm.
because I wouldn't say that from the very beginning I was very intentional to go to find it.
Right.
I'd say it kind of found me,
Mm-hmm.
and it was for me to allow myself to get into that space and understand.
Right.
Like
Right.
you mentioned, even with Jesus, in as much as it's he's the one that inspires, you know, the Christian religion,
Right.
you
Right.
find he himself was very keen on his culture, his Jewish culture.
Jewish culture. Yeah.
On the eighth day, he was circumcised according to the Jewish culture.
Yep. Yep.
There are certain things that he would do that were in line with the Jewish culture.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt, even as an African man, in as much as you're consuming a whole new religion, you also need to understand your culture.
Right.
How are things done? And now from that, finding ways to approach everything else that comes. But as I said, I would say it mainly starts from the conversations. Having lots of these conversations would have someone thinking, oh, that's interesting.
Right.
And it becomes more of like, in my local language, if I translate, we'd call it like fellowship,
Mm.
whereby you have people with knowledge opening up spaces to sit and have conversations with young people.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Having this person who has decided to go and drink from the fountain of knowledge, allowing himself to offer the same knowledge to the people around him. And I feel the moment such conversations happen becomes the beginning of something,
Right.
because that becomes you planting a seed in someone. And now from there, that is that finding them. And now it's for them to be aware and now start their own journey where they try a lot of self-discovery.
Yeah.
So I'd say that is the point where you have the spark, and hoping that the spark finds the fuel, and all of a sudden it becomes a fire.
And one of the things that I've learned through journeying in Africa is great patience. And we
Yes.
know that seeds take time. These trees, these things that you see around us, don't just happen
Exactly.
overnight. And so
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's the same for your journey. You're still
For sure.
journeying through.
For sure.
And so I kind of want now just to give people a little more taste of what it's like to be here. We see commercials, infomercials, again, I said, that show the sad kids on the street who are sick. And that does exist, but that's not literally, I'm telling you, if I show y'all the city, which I am, it is beautiful.
Yeah.
Talk about some of the other parts of the culture about Africa, just some of the beauty that you find in living here, and some of even just the historical figures of people that come from here.
Pretty much, even from the places we've been moving around, we've got to experience the culture of Nairobi from its architecture, from its people, from all the vibrant. We've seen the matatus, you know, the public transport around here, where
that's the bus for us in the States, the public bus. But
but now it's a fancier public bus with like music and TV screens in there and graffiti all over it. That already you get to see the expression of the people.
Yes.
Getting to understand some of the historical significance, like for instance, us moving around this neighborhood today in Kaloleni Estate.
Yes.
And getting to see a spot that Obama's father used to, you know, catch up with his friends.
Man, that's wild. That's still wild to me that we were there, but yeah.
So there's so much vibrance within the space. You see kids playing everywhere, and they're happy.
Right.
You know? So one thing you realize that there's so much warmth within the societies.
Yes.
Today we got into a space, we got to see a meal being prepped from beginning to end, and we got to enjoy it, you know. Yes. They did not expect us today. We didn't say that we're showing up to their home, yet we enjoyed the whole meal. Right. So one thing is that people are always there for each other. Even when there are a lot of adversities, there are a lot of difficulties within their societies, at least we show up for each other, which is the most important part. Man. All we've got is each other. Yeah.
Man, well, this has been great. I really hope and pray that this conversation is extremely impactful. They only get a dose of kind of what we've been getting, you know, since we've been here. I mean, you've given us so much to think about, to meditate on, and to really consider. And man, I want people, you know, who might see this, if you have the opportunity, we know everybody isn't necessarily fortunate enough to come here.
For sure.
But man, I want people to get connected to his brand, and if you want to shout it out again, I'm gonna put it up on social media. I'm gonna write it down. But he's been great. He's been guiding us around. Man, just thank you again. Seriously,
I appreciate it.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've been watching another episode of The Hub, which underlining it's all things for us, and by us I mean people of African descent in the United States. This is where you come from. This is literally you get a dose of just seeing somebody who's thriving and living here, and who loves it. And so I just wanted people to see that, and I'm learning as well. I'm still on this journey.
Yeah, indeed.
And I hope that you guys really check this out. I hope that this is beneficial. I'll write down some tips and some links. If you want to visit Kenya, I highly recommend Wango, and come see him. And it's easy to navigate when you have somebody. Man, we've been taking Ubers through the city. I won't say it's hard to walk. I try to go on a run, and I wouldn't recommend doing stuff like that unless you find a space. But if you have somebody to help you navigate,
Yeah.
it's a beautiful, beautiful place. And
Yeah.
so again, Wango, thank you for joining
Yeah.
the hub, all things for us,
Anytime.
with Damon Reynolds. I don't need to say my name; it's going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
But thanks again, man.
And probably also I'd mention the beauty is right now we also have the internet.
Yes.
So it's very easy for people to connect without physically going to spaces.
Yeah.
And right now we also have a lot of resources on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So the beauty is we have a lot of people still writing a lot of stuff. We have a lot of all this information that will be passed down orally.
Yeah.
Now it's written.
Yes.
So the beauty is there's a lot of resources on the internet as well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's also a great place to start from.
You know what? Any resources that you can push to folks, whether it's reading, whether it's a documentary, if they wanted to learn more about Kenya, and
Yeah.
just you want to tell them anything?
Things are everywhere.
Yeah.
That's the thing whereby with the internet, it's a
Yes.
whole pool of things everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel the moment I would recommend some writers. I think you got one of his books. His name is Ngugi wa Thiong'o.
I think I did. Yes.
And he's written a book called Decolonizing the Mind.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Yep.
So such a writer getting to start looking at his literature,
Mm-hmm.
that already becomes a point to start from.
Man.
So that already will lead you on to, the next. He'll mention probably certain names in the book. You're just going to look up this person and it leads into a whole other.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Well, Wango, appreciate you again.
Give thanks as well.
Thank you. This has been great. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Join us. See you soon.
Asante.